the middle of summer, and the heat clung to everything. The air, the trees, even the quiet old house at the end of Lakeview Lane. I had been spending my evenings in the living room with the air conditioner, trying to shake off the oppressive heat, but the summer nights were always thick and still. Every night I would sit by the window, the dim glow of my end table cast in shadows against the walls. One particular night, after the sun had finally dipped below the horizon and the last vestiges of daylight faded, I felt a strange unease. The air outside had grown cooler, but the feeling in my chest remained tight. I couldn't place it. At first, it seemed like a trick of the mind, a fleeting sensation that something was watching me. But as the evening crept on, it became undeniable. The windows of my living room, which normally offered a serene view of the surrounding woods, seemed to draw my gaze tonight like never before. I couldn't stop looking outside, as if something in the darkness was pulling my attention. My eyes darted to the trees, their branches whispering in the summer breeze, and then to the house next door, the old one, abandoned for as long as I could remember. It loomed like a forgotten shadow, its windows empty, but somehow not. It was then that I noticed it. A faint movement in the window. At first, it was so slight I thought it was just the trick of the light, or the reflection of my face in the glass. But no. There, behind the glass, was a figure. A pale face, illuminated just enough by the moonlight, peered out from the darkness. Its eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to stare directly at me. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, unable to tear my eyes away. I blinked, but the figure didn't disappear. It remained there, staring, unmoving. My heart raced. The figure was standing perfectly still, like it was waiting for something, or someone. It's just my imagination. It's nothing. But despite my words, a cold shiver crawled up my spine. Minutes passed, but I couldn't bring myself to look away. And then, slowly, the figure began to move. Not with the smoothness of a living person, but in jerky, deliberate motions, as though it wasn't fully human. The silhouette shifted closer to the window, its face now completely pressed against the glass. My stomach twisted in knots as I could feel its gaze, like it was piercing through the walls right to me. Suddenly, the lights flickered. My pulse thundered in my ears, and my hands shook as I fumbled to turn off the lamp beside the couch. The house plunged into darkness, leaving me in the shadowy void. I sat in stunned silence, my eyes wide, waiting for the lights to return, but they didn't, not yet. Then, I heard a soft tap against the window. My body tensed, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I didn't dare move, not a muscle, not a sound. Another tap, louder this time. My hand hovered over the switch, but I couldn't bring myself to flip it. I couldn't bring myself to look. Please, just go away. My thoughts screamed for the lights to come back on. But there was only the growing pressure in my chest, the cold weight of something unseen, something wrong. I felt a presence now, closer than ever, right outside my window, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. Another tap, and then silence. My breath was shallow, each inhale a ragged, desperate thing. I forced myself to slowly, cautiously glance towards the window, praying to see nothing, to find the house across the street as it always was, dark, abandoned, and empty. But when I looked, the figure was gone. My heart raced with relief. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, watching. Then, something moved. The figure wasn't in the window anymore. It was outside. It was looking at me, through my window. And then it began to move, towards my house. I bolted from the couch, my heart pounding in my throat. I ran towards the hallway, my footsteps heavy as I ran to my parents' room, but they were gone. The bed was empty. My parents had gone away for the weekend, leaving me all alone in the house. I grabbed my phone. The screen was dark, no signal, no battery, nothing. The house felt colder now, emptier, as if it had been drained of its warmth. My hands trembled as I made my way back to the living room window, cautiously pulling the curtains aside. My pulse skipped a beat. The figure was standing right in my yard. Its pale face was still, motionless, as it gazed up toward my window. And just before I could pull away from the glass, I saw it. Its mouth opened, a slow, chilling smile spreading across its face. It wasn't just watching me anymore. It was waiting for me. I stumbled back, horrified. But then, a sharp knock rang through the door downstairs. It was the middle of July, the kind of summer evening that felt like it would never end. The sun had just dipped beneath the trees, leaving the sky streaked with shades of pink and orange. A group of 4 friends, Jenna, Mark, Lila, and Ethan, were excited to make it through the big fireworks show in town. The scent of fresh grass mixed with the faint odor of charcoal from the neighborhood barbecues, and the sounds of laughter echoed in the warm, sticky air. But they were running late. They'd gotten distracted earlier in the evening, and now, as the stars began to peek out from the deepening sky, they were racing towards the show. The quickest way was to cut through the old cemetery on the edge of town. They'd all passed it 100 times before, a sprawling patch of land with cracked tombstones and overgrown grass. It was quiet, eerie even, but they weren't kids anymore. They were too old to be scared by something as harmless as a cemetery. I swear, if we missed the opening fireworks because of this shortcut, Lila complained, waving her hand through the humid air. You're always worried about the dumbest things, Mark said, grinning. It's just the cemetery. Who even goes in there? Ethan was already leading the way, his shoes crunching against the gravel path that wound between the graves. Come on, guys, we'll be fine. Just a little quicker than the road. The group followed, laughing and talking as they cut between the rows of tombstones. The stones were crooked and weathered, some leaning so much they seemed like they might fall over with a gust of wind. The place had a strange heaviness to it, as though the air itself was thicker here, weighed down by the long-departed souls buried beneath their feet. You think anyone still visits these people? Jenna asked, her voice lower than usual. No idea, Mark replied, but they're probably happy we're cutting through. Maybe they like the company. Lila rolled her eyes. I don't know, guys. Something about this place feels off. They kept walking, but Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't a logical thought, more of a primal instinct, the kind that tells you to run when there's no reason to. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing in the shadows of the graves, but there was nothing. Suddenly, the air around them seemed to grow colder, and a faint whispering, like a distant murmur, brushed against their ears. You hear that? Liza asked, her voice tight with unease. Probably just the wind, Mark said, though he was eyeing the trees now, his steps slowing. Ethan, the usual leader of the group, wasn't speaking anymore. He was walking faster, glancing back every few seconds. It's just the stupid cemetery, Mark muttered, trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. But then the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They weren't wind.
Help! Help! Help me!
Jenna froze, her stomach dropping. It wasn't just a voice. It was the sound of someone calling for help, a faint cry for help. Did you hear that? She gasped. Lila's eyes were wide, her face pale. There's someone here. Ethan spun around, his breath coming faster now. Guys, we need to go, now. But it was too late. From the corner of her eye, Jenna saw a figure, a woman, standing in the shadows of a large oak tree. She wore a long white dress, but it was tattered at the edges, like it had been torn by the wind. Her long hair hung around her face in dark, matted strands, and her eyes were black, deep, soulless pits of darkness. The woman stepped forward. The ground beneath her feet didn't seem to stir, but Jenna could hear the soft dragging of something heavy, something that scraped along the earth. Who is that? Mark whispered, his voice trembling. I don't know, Lila whispered back, her eyes wide with panic. Before anyone could move, the woman's voice rang out again, clear and sharp, but still tinged with desperation.
Help me, please.
The 4 friends backed away slowly, but the woman didn't seem to move. She was still watching them, her hollow eyes locked onto theirs. The whispering continued, growing louder now, a chorus of voices, soft and broken, overlapping each other. Suddenly, Ethan stumbled and fell to the ground, his legs giving out as if an invisible force had yanked him down. His friends rushed to him, trying to help him back up, but as they touched him, a coldness shot through their hands, but they were touching ice. "What the hell?" Lila screamed. A cold wind rushed through the cemetery, rattling the branches of the trees, and in the blink of an eye, the woman was no longer standing by the tree. She was in front of them, inches away. The whispering intensified, becoming a cacophony of frantic voices, some sobbing, some pleading, and some screaming. And then, in the midst of it all, the woman's voice rose above the others.
You're not leaving.
The ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet. The shadows around them deepened, closing in. Jenna could barely breathe. Each exhale was sharp and ragged, the air too thick to get through. Before anyone could react, the figure of the woman lunged at them, her hands like claws reaching out. "Run!" Mark shouted, pulling Ethan to his feet. They sprinted through the cemetery, not daring to look back, not even slowing to catch their breath. The whispers followed them, growing louder, more urgent, until it felt like the whole cemetery was alive with 1,000 lost souls. Vagant stopped until they were out of the cemetery and onto the main road, the flashing lights of the fireworks show illuminating the night sky behind them. Then as they turned to look back at the cemetery one last time, they saw her, the woman, standing in the distance, watching them with those empty eyes. She didn't move, but they could feel her gaze. And then, in the crackling silence, the final whisper came, not from a cemetery, but from the very air around them.
I'll be waiting.
The fireworks exploded above them, but for the rest of the night, the beauty of the colors didn't matter. The chilling feeling that they hadn't escaped, that something was still following them, clung to them like a shadow. It was supposed to be the perfect weekend. Ethan had booked a secluded lake house on the edge of the forest in a small town in Pennsylvania, a place to escape the chaos of the city and unwind for the 4th of July. The rustic cabin, perched near the water's edge, seemed like the ideal retreat. A porch that overlooked the lake, a boat dock, and a promise of quiet nights beneath the stars. It was everything he needed. But as the sun began to set, casting an eerie orange glow across the water, Ethan started to feel an unsettling presence he couldn't quite shake. He was alone, just him and his thoughts. The fireworks displays were planned for later in the evening, but for now, the lake was still, the air thick with the humid summer heat. He'd gone for a swim earlier, the cool water giving him a brief respite from the oppressive humidity, but now, as the shadows lengthened, something about the isolation felt off. The silence of the evening was broken by the distant hum of a boat engine. Ethan stood on the dock, squinting towards the sound. The boat was just a dark silhouette against the evening sky. It seemed to be drifting aimlessly, circling the lake, moving in slow, erratic patterns. The only people who had rented cabins nearby were a family a few miles down the shore, but this boat didn't belong to them. No one else was supposed to be out here. He stepped back inside the cabin, locking the door behind him. His gaze kept drifting to the water, to the faint outline of the boat that seemed to get closer, but never quite came ashore. As the minutes passed, the engine grew louder, the steady churning of the water growing more pronounced. Ethan tried to ignore the unease creeping up his spine, chalking it up to his imagination. It wasn't unusual for people to be out in the lake after dark, and yet the boat's behavior felt wrong. It was moving too deliberately, too purposefully, as if whoever was driving it was waiting for something, or for someone. He pulled the curtain shut, pacing around the cabin. His phone had no signal, naturally, a reminder of how far out in the woods he was. He couldn't even call the police if something went wrong. On our way back to town was a 15-minute drive. The thought of being stuck here, with no one to help, sent a shiver through his spine. He grabbed a bottle of wine from the counter, trying to calm his nerves. But the boat didn't stop. It circled again, now much closer to the shore. Ethan pressed his hands against the glass, trying to make out the figure in the boat. Just a vague outline of a man sitting in the driver's seat, his head turned toward the shore. His gaze fell to rest ahead him. The boat stopped. It was now just beyond the dock, the motor idling. The stillness of the water was almost suffocating. His heart pounded in his chest. Then, without warning, the engine roared to life again, and the boat lurched forward. It raced towards his cabin, cutting through the water with terrifying speed. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He rushed to the front door and pulled it open, stepping onto the porch, just as the boat zoomed past. The man on the boat didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed straight ahead, but Ethan could feel his presence like a cold weight pressing on his chest. For a moment, the boat seemed to disappear into the darkness of the lake, and Ethan relaxed slightly. Maybe it was just someone enjoying the night, he thought, trying to reason with himself. But then, the boat circled back, and again, and again. Each time, it grew closer. There was no mistaking it now. The man in the boat was stalking him. Fear gripped him like an iron vise. He could hear the engine growling, cutting through the night air, its rhythm so calculated, so deliberate. He wasn't just boating, he was watching him. Ethan backed into the cabin, his pulse racing. He locked the door and pulled the curtain shut again, but it felt useless. He knew that if he wanted to get in, he could. There were no other houses for miles, no other souls to help him. It was just him and this stranger on the water, closing in. He grabbed his keys, his hands trembling as he fumbled with them. His plan was simple: drive the main road, get out of here, get help. But before he could reach the door, the boat appeared again, this time coming straight toward the dock. The light from the boat's headlamp illuminated the porch, casting long, twisting shadows across the cabin's walls. Ethan froze, his breath caught in his throat. The man wasn't just circling now. He was approaching the shore, and he wasn't stopping. The engine cut. The boat drifted slowly toward the dock, the bow of the boat gently bumping against the wooden posts. There was a long moment of silence, and then the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, each beat growing louder. The door to the cabin rattled as something heavy struck it from outside. Ethan stumbled backward, his mind screaming for him to do something, anything. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a notification, a text message from his friend, Jenna, asking if everything was okay. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. There was only one thing on his mind now: survival. He crept toward the back of the cabin, his ears straining for any sound from the front. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer. He was on the porch. The door crashed open with a violent shove, but when Ethan turned to look, the boat was gone. The man was nowhere in sight. All that remained was the haunting echo of the boat's engine, still reverberating through the air, and the oppressive silence that followed.